Something very close to my heart today: how to render beef tallow at home. Just one of those things that's really good to know if you're a do it yourselfer or if you just like having healthy fat around, because beef tallow, animal fat, is very healthy for you. I have a ton of experience doing this. I've been doing this for about 20 years. This is like a 50-pound block of goat tallow, and I actually render that for the lamb and goat farm that I work with. And I had a restaurant where I bought like 100-quart stock pots to render 150 pounds of beef tallow at a time for French fries, because it makes the best French fries. Very important tips here: keep your fat frozen. Suet and fat are the same thing. Keep them frozen until you're ready to cook, because they are highly perishable. Inspect and smell your fat. Some places will keep it in the fridge. It's going to go bad in just a few days. And a secret: use an immersion blender. I'll get to that. And don't overcook it, because it's going to taste like crap. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get your suet, your beef fat, and ideally, do not buy this from a place unless it is frozen, because it is highly, highly perishable, which is kind of counterintuitive because fat, when it's rendered, lasts basically forever. And what you're going to do here is just cut the fat into pieces, and you can use kidney suet. This, I'm assuming, is probably from around the belly or the shoulder, and just cut it into pieces. Doesn't have to be perfect. The finer the pieces of fat, the faster it is going to render. So if you don't have an immersion blender, you're going to want to cut the fat into small pieces. I'm also going to go over an alternate technique that I use when I'm rendering like over 50 pounds at a time, but it includes some you need some more experience to do that, because even I messed it up, and I'm excited to show you that. But you can also just take a chef knife and chop the fat into little pieces, and you can do this in a crock pot. You can do this in a pot in the oven. There's a number of different ways to do it. Now, I talked about one way that I do it when I'm rendering a lot of fat at a time. So using a meat grinder is absolutely the most efficient way to do this, but the higher level of learning here is that if the fat is not at the correct temperature, which you will see shortly, it is going to be a huge pain, because it will clog up the meat grinder, and cleaning cold congealed fat out of a meat grinder is like, it's terrible, but it can be done. So what you would do here, you're going to use a large die, the largest die that you have, and you're going to put that on the meat grinder. And ideally, my fat here was just refrigerated and it got too warm. So if you need it frozen, but not too frozen, because that'll clog it up too, it needs to be taken out of the freezer, and basically you want to par freeze it. Like freeze it for like 20 or 30 minutes. Because as you can see here, the fat was coming out okay at first, and now I can tell that the grinder is all clogged up, and now there's all kinds of bleeping going on, and this is not a good thing. So take your fat that's all chopped up, and you're going to mix it with some water in a crock pot. This is so easy. You're also going to want to put this in a place like a garage, because your significant other will hate you if you do this in the house. It's going to stink like beef fat. Not necessarily bad, but just ideally you want to do it outside. I do it on my porch. Now, the secret here that I don't see anyone talking about: you can put it in a blender, but an immersion blender is a lot easier to clean, because beef fat has a low melting point and it's going to solidify, and it's a pain to clean out of the blender. So all you have to do is clean off your immersion blender there, and then we're just going to cook this on, high or low heat, depending on how much time you have. And this is not quite ready yet, but it's only going to take like 2 or 3 hours if you buzz all the fat up. If you cook it into chunks, it's inefficient, and you're not going to get as high of a yield. Okay, so we can see the fat is cooking here. It's not quite ready. What we're looking for is the fat to be crystal clear. So now, boom, this is just about perfect. Now, you don't want to see too much browning or coloring. Once the fat is clear, like crystal clear, and I can see these little bubbles coming up, that means the impurities have kind of cooked out, or what I mean by that is any water or liquid, and that means the fat is totally ready. Do not cook the fat until it is browned, because you'll overcook the fat and scorch it, and then the whole thing is going to be ruined. So If you see the fat clear and there's no little brown pieces at all, that's totally fine. Just go ahead and strain it, because it's better to do that than to overcook it. Then just take your fat, put it into room temperature jars, and you can keep that in the fridge or the freezer. It's going to be basically last forever, especially if you put it in the freezer. But don't put it into a cold jar because it can crack it. What do you do with beef fat? Use it to make the most incredible roasted potatoes you've ever had, or the most incredible hash browns you've ever had. I have recipes for both of those on my site. And just for nostalgia, that is the burger from my first restaurant where I cooked the fries in all 100% beef fat, just like McDonald's used to do. There you go. I hope you learned a little bit about rendering beef tallow at home. Really easy to do. Anyone can do it, and it's a great way to incorporate healthy fats into your diet. The full recipe is on my website. There's a link at the top of the video description for that. Thanks for watching.